signings and action items, so I'll be looking for an order to execute the signing for resolution number 2018-44, which is the community.
It's the 1935.
Right.
Oh, that's right. It's the fee schedule, sorry. Amending the motion to read executing of the signing of resolution number 2019-35, community development fee schedule.
I move that we execute the signing of order for resolution 2019-35, community development fee schedule.
Bill Brooks?
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
Aye.
Chairman Philios?
Aye, motion carried. Do you want us to sign first?
And then 7B, that order is not quite ready yet. We'll bring it back to you on May the 2nd next week.
Okay.
Okay. So then pursuant to Attorney Pat Braden's recommendation, item B, case number VAR 18-0008, will defer until the order is prepared and that we can execute. Moving on to item C, case number VAR 18-0010, request by John Hunt for 13-foot variance to the rear setback. Do I have a motion to execute the order of decision?
Yes, I move that we execute the order of decision by signing VAR 18-0010, request by John.
Second the motion.
Bill Brooks?
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
Aye.
Chairman Philios?
Aye, motion carried. And we're executing the order of decision. So that takes us on to Roman numeral 8, which is the business segment of our meeting today. It's a community development update. There is one item, direction from the board on the Omnibus 3 update, potential action item. Director Callahan.
Mr. Chairman, bear with me while I'm fumbling through. I'm trying to find the board's update file. This morning I drug into something I wanted to show you. This just looks different from my. It should be. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Ben. What I'm pulling up for you is what should be an easy cheat sheet. For us to discuss the Omnibus 3 updates to put us all in the same playing field. Omnibus is just a term of art that we've used to mean a collection of a good many changes to the Land Use and Development Code. We're on number 3 because Omnibus 1 and 2 came after the code consolidation of 2016, and all of these items are for the most part housekeeping with some specific exceptions I'm going over next. The previous board had asked for the Planning Commission to consider amending the Land Use and Development Code in specific ways. I'll go over them specifically in just a moment, but I want to set the context for you first. And the Planning Commission had 3, if I remember right, workshops where we went over each and every item. Ultimately, we drilled down on what I'm about to show you so that they are recommending taking out certain express provisions of Omnibus 3, chiefly because they think it's, I'm paraphrasing, but they think it's too controversial and not warranted at this time. And so the reason this is before you is so that we don't roll out an Omnibus 3 for the public hearing process that includes items that the Plan Commission doesn't agree with, doesn't want to go forward with. And I wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with taking them out too.
Okay.
That way, we end up with Omnibus 3 that's properly advertised and presumably goes through relatively quickly because there aren't controversial aspects to it. Does that give you enough of a stage?
Sure, and then I think David had something to say.
And he does, but I was gonna actually go through
First.
the specific
Oh,
items,
okay, yeah.
which are on the screen.
Could I just add one thing?
Yeah,
to
sure.
that?
Yeah, go ahead,
Is
David.
that the final omnibus that the planning commission had to review came to us in December of 2018, and the request was to have a public hearing that month in order for the previous board
Yes.
to approve it. We did not feel that the public or the planning commission had adequate time to review it and give feedback. Because the comprehensive plan is so important and we are focused on doing a comprehensive plan, there was discussion on the planning commission to delay the omnibus until the completion of the comprehensive plan. And that would have deferred this whole thing until the fall or maybe even a little later. David, Director Callahan, told us there's a lot of things that are administrative in here that would help the public as well as help his department. So what we did here is said, look, we would like to do this where it makes sense and we could get a public feedback and get a decision made rather quickly so we can get it to you by the fall. Versus having some of these other items that we may or may not agree with, but are more controversial and would delay the whole process and would mean that we would have to defer this because we did not want to interrupt the comprehensive plan. So that's the reason why this is a compromise. The items that are in yellow are things that the planning commission would like to consider after, as Omnibus 4 type of thing, but we just think it'll take a lot more public input to get us to a place where we can make a decision.
Understood.
When you say that the commission or committee, was it a unanimous?
Yeah. Which piece was unanimous?
Taking these out?
Yes, it was, we went through each one, David and Pat gave us a background in each one of them, and it was a complete unanimous decision by the planning commission to defer, not
Right.
to necessarily not do.
Right.
Just to defer it so we can get this done and get the good parts of this approved if the public feedback provides us that input. And then delay the other stuff until after the comprehensive plan, where we have more time to basically thoroughly vet it with the public and ourselves.
Okay.
That's good
Is that it, Dave?
context, thank you, David.
Thank you.
This first item was an idea to clarify the current code. There's actually some debate as to whether it's needed or not. I mean, this may be one that never shows back up in Omnibus 4. But I think Chairman Levine's point is still valid, that we can still discuss it in any future. But again, you've heard recommendation to take it out. And it really, if it has merit, it's really just to streamline how we review these kinds of situations. But again, at the moment, we're just suggesting we don't need it for this omnibus.
Okay, go ahead.
Similarly, repealing the prohibitions in the ag zone, you actually just had a discussion for
I was
that
just thinking
yesterday.
that, yes, yeah.
And that, I think everyone that's looked at this agrees would be a barn burner of a discussion. So that's why that's recommended to come out. Moving along to helipads, this is one I have to take the heat for. I've met with some people a couple of times where they happen to be pilots. They happen to own helicopters. They were miffed that I had to make a judgment call to say that it was okay for them to land their helicopter on their current property because the Federal Aviation Administration leaves these kinds of things up to the helicopter pilot. It's a discretionary call by the pilot. Our land use code doesn't prohibit it, in my view, but neither does it expressly authorize it. So that's why I had suggested putting it in here as a way to have the controversy before the public, make a decision, be done with it, so that I'm not making a judgment call. But at the moment, you just heard why we're suggesting taking it out. Does that give you enough?
Yeah.
Yep.
Bill, are you following?
I am completely.
Okay.
Here, the previous commissioners had suggested that we take out the current regulation that allows certain properties to meet only a fire district standard for access and reinstitute a county road standard. We had a county road standard before 2016, and we purposely went to a fire district standard. We thought it was easier, more direct, and more useful. Again, this was a recommendation by your predecessors. The planning commission suggesting taking it out because of reasons I won't go into, but we can dialogue if you want to.
Go ahead.
And I think this is the last couple here. This would have been this expanding the subdivision process to go from what's currently 4 or fewer to up to 10 would be a very significant change in our subdivision review process. And again, it was your predecessors that asked for this. Again, the planning commission suggested not now, not this omnibus.
Okay.
And similarly, in 2016, when we consolidated the codes, we expressly took out, if I remember right, or maybe it was an omnibus that followed, but we expressly took out the bonus density in conservation subdivisions because we thought it was misleading and unhelpful.
It was
People-
actually, yeah, it was in the 2016.
It was the cause, thank you,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. Consolidation.
Okay.
So we expressly took it out. Your predecessors wanted to put it back in. The planning commission thinks now is not the time, and staff agrees. This proposal by your predecessors would have increased our notice, significantly increased the cost for comp plan and rezoning changes. Presumably we would notice, I'm just making this up, but suppose for the current update that we're doing, we would presume, if this were in place, we would presumably notice all 10,000 plus property owners, which would cost us some considerable amount of money, because the proposal was that the county should pay for it. In my view, there's nothing broken with our notice procedures. We always get ample response to any comp plan update. And so the plan commission agrees, that's why it's being recommended to take it out now.
What, question?
Yes,
How do
sir.
they define, or how do we define enhanced public notice?
This would be a direct mail piece to the property owner. in
Every property owner in
Every-
an incorporated area of the county.
Within the, oh, okay.
So that's where I came up with the 10,000 plus.
Oh, okay.
It's all the property owners in the unincorporated county. And direct mail costs what it costs. So we could spend real money every time we do that kind of notice.
Okay.
So those are all of the significant changes that the Plan Commission recommends to take out. You could agree with all of them, none of them, or some part of it. I'd just like to have your opinion, if you would, today, so that we can roll this out soon for a public hearing process.
If these changes are going to be brought back forth in Omnibus 4, what's that timeframe?
Haven't gotten there, I don't know, but
Oh,
presumably
Yeah, it'd be after the comp plan update is.
So after September would be my guess.
Okay.
So you're planning, four planning commission hearings, is that correct? First one being tonight?
They're
For the
not
update.
hearings,
For
they're
the update, I'm sorry.
community development
Meetings.
meetings.
And that's
They're
for the
feedback
update, not
sessions.
For the
Yes.
update?
For the update.
Oh, okay.
And we hope to we'll have them done by the end of June. We have
So-
5 of them, I think, actually.
Right, so there's 4 after tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there's 4 after tonight,
Yeah.
okay.
Total of 5.
So, go through the sequence here with me for everyone's benefit. So we have the update, we have Omnibus 3, and we have comp plan. What's the flow?
Well, the first thing to separate in your mind is this is unrelated to the update.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you with me so far?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a code amendment that flies on its own outside of any comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Okay. This will roll forward in the usual way where we will schedule at least 28 days notice for a public hearing for the plan commission. And then normally we'd have another 28 days for your hearing.
For our hearing.
At your discretion, and I'm fine with it, we could sort of double notice, meaning we can schedule for the plan commission and your hearing with known dates. That saves some time if you want. It's not, since I don't see this as being highly controversial, I'm fine with that. It'd be a nice way to sort of get things out of the way.
Okay.
That would be the normal rollout for this.
Okay.
For the comp plan update, we have 5 total meetings scheduled to get public input. We need to be somewhat flexible based on each meeting. You can imagine, tonight we may get 3 people, we may get 300. Don't know. Depending on what we get and what their concerns are, we'll need to sort of adjust as these things go. Because at some point, we'll presumably take all of that input and make any useful adjustments to the update, and then schedule for an actual public hearing where we would take final comments, and then both with the plan commission and with you. So that's why we're looking at October-ish before we actually finish that process.
What are the locations of the 5 hearings?
Micah Grange, Mountain, up by Metamont.
Metamont.
That's a mountain.
Apple,
Uh-huh.
and Rathrum, the technical college.
And here
And
tonight.
And here,
Here.
okay,
Right.
okay. All right.
So we have pretty good geographic coverage. It's not perfect, but pretty good.
And time frame for Omnibus 3?
We just talked about that.
Do it again.
That will notice 28 days, and then we could do a double notice if you want.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I got it.
Possibly have a hearing in July.
Yeah, what we would do, what we talked about doing, and again, David's 100% correct, it's fluid right now at this moment, is since the public feedback sessions are done at the end of June, we'll take that time in July to tabulate all the comments and put it in a report, and give us time to evaluate before we finalize the proposal for the comprehensive plan. When that happens, whatever you approve, Pat can go out and make those changes. He's already made the changes, I think, to remove what we recommended. And
Okay,
we were trying.
I think we're.
You've mixed it.
Yeah, we're-
Yeah, no,
Planning on
mixing it up.
Omnibus
Okay,
3
all right,
and the comp
all right,
plan.
I'm sorry, all right. What we were trying to do is work this in between the finishing up of the feedback sessions and before we do the
Yes.
public hearing for the comprehensive plan. So the time frame would be in the August time frame was what we were hoping for this, the Omnibus 3. And that's what we were trying to work. So we're trying to work this in between what we're
And
doing.
So the Omnibus 3 doesn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, does not involve a roadshow?
Correct.
Okay.
It just merely needs a public hearing with plan
Yeah.
commission and you.
Okay.
As soon as we get direction
And-
here, we can notice that up for public.
And
hearing.
the tricky part is working it with the plan commission where they don't feel pushed.
Okay.
If it's simple housekeeping, possibly a July hearing with,
I think you've taken out the angst right now.
Okay.
In my view, I think this can roll out as quickly as we can make happen the plan commission agree to.
Right, and as David indicated, we've already had workshops on these other items, so the planning commission is already aware of the
Right.
other items and have the information we need. So really, it's just getting it to the public because we really want their feedback.
Yeah, the final draft for, at this point is done, and it incorporates all the changes
You
that,
can actually go live with that
yeah, we.
on the webpage.
Yeah, like as soon as today.
Right. And please stay mindful, right behind Omnibus 3, we have a floodplain update code amendment I need in order to keep us square, if you will, with the state of Idaho. And in my view, it's relatively uncontroversial. It should be straightforward. We've talked with everyone that cares about it, but it needs to have the usual public hearing process. If I can convince the plan commission, I'd like to do them at the same hearing. I don't know that I can.
Yeah, that could be an uphill battle.
But I'd like to at least have the discussion, or at least have them closely behind each other, because it should be relatively uncontroversial, something we really have to do in order for us to stay compliant with state law.
So I guess just my concern is I haven't had a time to really go through and look at these yellow sections, which is, you know, my
Sure.
fault, I didn't
Sure.
find the right folder. So as long as they are gonna come back, I mean, I'd like to have time to see, but if the planning commission unanimously said
Right.
that they wanna hold these off until next time, then, you know, I guess we can go with that, but I think there's some good discussion in here with some of these
Sure.
things that you want removed, or held back, I guess I should say.
Deferred is what we.
Yeah,
Deferred.
defer, I think
Thank you.
deferred would be a good
Yes.
word.
Bill, any thoughts?
No, everything sounds, all reasonable and well thought out.
So you're looking for a motion
Yes, sir.
to approve your recommendation that the highlighted items be deferred and that we proceed with the rest.
Perfect.
Alright, I move that we approve the Omnibus 3 to go forward with the items discussed today deferred until the next Omnibus change.
I would second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, motion carried. Public comment?
Just one staff
Go right
comment,
ahead.
but just to let you know, I did, when I went and took the sections out that I had drafted pursuant to those topics that we've decided to defer, I did keep them on a separate sheet, and so they are, you know, available to, you know, for, you know, whoever's consideration. At whatever point, so, that was it.
Summer, please.
Will they be available online, the updated omnibus?
Yes.
Yep.
Any other questions, statements, concerns? The time is